Thank you all for joining us today for another edition of SCF's webinar series. Today we'll be discussing how multifamily properties can embrace solar energy and EV charging as a service with zero capital expenditures. We're grateful to be joined by co-founder and CEO Greg Siertek of Glow Energy, as well as first vice president of CBRE's Capital Markets Division, John Teal, to help communicate this vision. Let's begin. We'll start off today by discussing a bit about sustainable capital finance, who we are, where we've been, and where we're headed. We'll then discuss the recent update from the California Public Utilities Commission and how it affects the multifamily timeline. I'll then pass it off to John Teal, who will discuss more about CBRE and the current state of the marketplace, as well as interest growth. Greg will follow with comments on how Glow Energy currently operates and the solution that we've put together that multifamily owners can take advantage of. We'll then wrap up by discussing an optimal use case example for a California multifamily property owner and answer any and all questions that you all have for us. So a little bit about SCF. We are a third-party PPA financier operating exclusively in the C&I market. Over the last 10 years, we've financed solutions at churches, golf clubs, schools, commercial entities, and municipalities spanning across 18 states. In collaboration with some of the market's largest independent power producers, SCF has contracted over $200 million in distributed generation. SCF intakes most of its opportunities through their free financing platform, the SCF Suite, which hosts over 300 EPC and developer partners and provides indicative PPA rates in a matter of seconds and proposal generation features in a matter of minutes or less. So as most of us know, back in December of 2022, the California Public Utilities Commission, also known as CPUC, voted to significantly reduce the value of solar systems by lowering the rate at which any excess solar power is exported to the grid. So instead of the previous retail rates customers were being credited at around 30 cents a kilowatt hour, we're now being credited for those export rates at an estimated 8 cents per kilowatt hour, which is a nearly 75% drop in value. And this initial switch didn't incorporate their VNEM or NEM-A programs in the initial verbiage. And over the last year, they've gone over much deliberation trying to figure out essentially what role VNEM NEM-A is going to play in NEM 3.0, and postpone their vote on this multiple times. For those of you that do not know, VNEM and NEM-A allows for multiple properties, multiple electric meters at a specific property to share one solar system's electricity and bill credits. This is obviously very applicable for multifamily properties. However, after much deliberation, the CPUC made their final ruling about 10 days ago with essentially a decision to dissolve these VNEM and NEM-A tariff programs. And this is important because this has now enacted a 90-day window. The 90-day window essentially starts from the last date of their decision. And so essentially now we have less than 90 days, about 80 days or less to get grandfathered into these previous VNEM and NEM-A programs and be able to take advantage of the previous credited retail rates, which are now looking more like wholesale rates, as we mentioned above with the drop in value. So to be grandfathered in, SCF and their partners are going to need to submit for interconnection on these respective properties. And to submit for an interconnection at these properties is really step 5 or 6 in the process of engaging with SCF. Generally, we'd like to take a look at your site, have it evaluated for solar plus EVC potential, take a look at obviously the utility that you're under, and the occupancy rate at your respective multifamily property. All these things are going to go into an equation for an avoided cost calculation, which is going to give us a good idea at the PPA rate we can support for your respective tenants. Furthermore, we're going to take a look at the prospective EVC utilization at that site. So do we have public access to this parking lot, or do we only have current access to that parking based on the tenants available? Generally, in scenarios where we only have tenant availability for parking, we wouldn't be able to support a full-fledged level 3 and level 2 charging solution. We'd only be able to provide a level 2 solution. And we'll get more into that later, but essentially, incorporating a full-fledged analysis on the prospective EVC potential at the site is going to at first take a look at, can we have fast chargers? And if we can have fast chargers, what is the prospective utilization assumptions that we can utilize, that we can provide for that site, that we can be able to provide a pricing back to that property owner, whether that is a revenue share at 10% or revenue share at 5% based on where that property is located. Is going to be all in that due diligence phase that we'll go through with you. And the quicker we can do that analysis, the quicker we can take a look at your property, the quicker we can get everything that needs to be done to allow us to submit for interconnection at that respective property. But the time really is now to take advantage of these programs. And so we'll list our contact information here at the end of these slides. But our goal is, if you have these opportunities, to be in contact with you as quickly as possible so that our team can take a look at them and allow you the comfortability and understanding whether or not we can move forwards, and if we can, the next steps to be able to do so successfully. And with that, I will pass it off to John Teal.
Hello, thank you for having me on. My name is John Teal. I'm a first vice president with CBRE Capital Markets. My team and I focus on investment sales in the 9-county Bay Area region of multifamily assets. Over the last 10 years, we've been fortunate enough to transact on over 41,000 apartment units across more than 410 transactions, valued at over $13.5 billion in total consideration. CBRE is the number one multifamily advisor in the country. In 2022, we ranked number one in a number of categories, including overall investment sales volume, institutional sales volume of assets valued over $25 million, as well as number one in the single asset category of $100 million plus. In addition, CBRE has a service line called Debt and Structured Finance, where our CBRE debt professionals act as originators for refinance and new acquisition financing on multifamily assets. What that gives us is good insight into how today's investor, today's landlord, and today's lender are all looking at multifamily assets, specifically in the Bay Area, but also we have great connectivity with our other brokerage teams throughout the country and throughout California. And so today we're here to talk about the California multifamily market. A few statistics that I found particularly interesting is, speaking of the existing stock of apartment units, apartment properties with over 50 units, there's just a hair under 15,000 apartment buildings in all of California. There are just under 500 apartment projects under construction, and proposed in the pipeline future projects that are entitled throughout all of California. There's just under 1,000, 994. Now, speaking geographically, 76% of all of California's apartments are located in the Los Angeles, San Diego, and San Francisco MSAs. The average year built of the average 50-plus unit apartment building in California is 1983. Now, if we drill down into what the housing stock and the apartment stock looks like in California, a few notable takeaways that I think will impact some conversations around sustainable initiatives on multifamily assets are that 80% of the 15,000 apartment buildings in California are what we would call garden style. Garden style apartments are characterized as 1 to 3 stories. You can also call them low rise, or some even categorized as townhome developments that are operated as rentals. Only 17% of the housing stock is mid-rise, what we would characterize 4 to 8 stories, typically built on either a podium construction or wrap construction. And then lastly, 3% of the housing stock is high-rise, 9 stories or above, built with concrete and steel. Now, the average density of garden style versus mid-rise versus high-rise is notable, but I think if we look one row down, the average parking stalls per unit is more interesting or top of mind for this conversation. So garden-style apartments, on average, offer 1.63 parking stalls per unit. Contrast that against mid-rise at 1.29 and high-rise at 1.13 stalls per unit. Basically, the garden style, the lower density apartment assets offer their renters more parking stalls per unit on average. Now, I find that interesting for 2 reasons. One, garden style apartments, their parking solution is typically surface parking. Some is covered, some is uncovered. If the parking is in a high enough concentration, that parking can become opportunities for immediate solar deployment to either offset the landlord's utility expenses for common area electrical, as well as increase top line revenue, depending on how that project is structured. It also offers the opportunity for EV charging, which is notable as it does attract residents that have EVs, electric vehicles. That number is growing every year, especially here in California with the rebates that are being offered for electric vehicles. But also there's trends that show renters that have electric vehicles have higher income potentials, and so that is the type of resident that most landlords like. Now, the second thing that's unique about this is from a migration trend analysis over the last 3 years since the pandemic, there's been some trends worth noting. Specifically in the Bay Area, we saw a net out migration of renters and residents from the CBDs, the urban CBD settings like San Francisco, Oakland, and downtown San Jose. Majority of these residents moved to surrounding suburban settings that are also characterized by a higher concentration of garden-style, older vintage apartments, as opposed to the newer, more dense mid-rise and high-rise apartments in the urban CBDs. These renters are slowly being attracted back either to suburban settings that are closer and immediately surrounding the CBDs, as the return to work or the return to office trend continues to gain steam. Albeit the Bay Area is not a great poster child for return to work, but it is a trend that is tracking across the country. And over time, landlords in suburban settings are going to want to find ways to be more competitive to draw their residents into these suburban settings if and when they have to start going back to work on a more full-time basis in the middle of the cities. Now, to take a step back, it's worth noting that the capital markets have moved significantly since the first quarter of last year in 2022. A few notes to just mention is that as a direct result of rising interest rates, the builder return on cost requirements for multifamily assets has risen by approximately 100 to 150 basis points from approximately a 4.75 to a 5 in early 2022 to today 6 to 6.5. Now, the investor cap rates have also escalated by a similar margin of 125 to 175 basis points, basically from for core assets in well-located Bay Area neighborhoods, a high 3, mid 3 to a high 3 to a 5 or a 5.25 in today's environment. Also, financing costs for multifamily assets have risen by 400 to 500 basis points. Now, this is notable for multifamily investors and operators that are looking to refinance their property or looking to acquire new property and put acquisition financing on that new asset. Their debt service coverage ratios are being limited, and that is now the constraining factor for multifamily lenders and borrowers is passing the debt service coverage test. So the reason I'm mentioning the opportunities for sustainable initiatives on multifamily assets is that they all offer unique opportunities for the landlord to drive NOI growth. The higher NOI can grow through either additions to the top line revenue streams or discounts from expenses is going to be well received in today's environment from multifamily landlords, whether they're looking to bring the property to market for a sale in the next 12 to 18 to 24 months, or if they have a debt maturity or a cap maturity coming on their loans, they need to find some flexibility either in the debt markets or they need to drive NOI growth by looking at some creative alternatives. Now, I'd love to pass this over to the next presenter, and thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you all today. Feel free to reach me or anyone on the CBRE network if we can ever assist you with your multifamily portfolio. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Greg Suritek, co-founder and CEO of Glow Energy. Glow Energy is a technology company that unlocks the opportunity for multifamily property owners to create a new ancillary income stream by providing cost-saving solar energy to their residents as an amenity. We started Glow Energy in 2022 and are proudly backed by Y Combinator, Collaborative Fund, Global Founders Capital, and other leading Silicon Valley technology investors. Our first product puts multifamily solar administration on autopilot. Glow Energy offers tenants the opportunity to subscribe to an on-site solar program that is guaranteed to save them money on their monthly energy bills. The enrollment process is very straightforward and only takes a minute to complete. Tenants maintain ownership of their existing electric utility accounts and use their online utility account credentials to grant Glow Energy authorized access to the relevant billing and meter interval data. For offline tenants, Glow Energy supports a paper-based sign-up process. Once enrolled, tenant subscribers will receive monthly solar energy bills that include a percentage discount on solar energy relative to their current utility tariff. On their bill, tenants are shown how much of their power is coming from the solar system versus the utility and the sustainability impact of participating in the solar program. To streamline tenant onboarding and offboarding, Glow Energy integrates with leading property management software systems such as Yardi, RealPage, and AppFolio. Glow Energy's payment system allows the subscribing tenant to pay a unified electric utility plus solar bill, and Glow Energy will remit a portion of their payment on their behalf to the utility. A second option is to manage payments via the property management software Rent Ledger, where tenants can pay for their solar bill using the same method they use to pay rent. I'm really excited to partner with the SCF team to bring multifamily properties a compelling combination of on-site generated solar power and EV charging. SCF offers property owners a percentage share of the program's revenue and covers 100% of upfront and ongoing program costs. Glow Energy will collaborate with the property management team to introduce the program to building tenants and help them complete the enrollment process. This includes property site visits where tenants can enroll in person with one of Glow Energy's team members. 10% guaranteed energy savings with no upfront fees or long-term commitments will motivate tenants to enroll in the program, and Glow Energy offers convenient options for paying solar bills via its platform. Lastly, Glow Energy has an in-house customer service team that is available via phone and email during normal business hours and can serve tenants in both English and Spanish. All tenant inquiries are directed to Glow Energy, which makes this program a truly lightweight way to drive NOI and tenant satisfaction without adding to the workload of property management teams.
Thanks, Greg, for laying that out for us. Moving on to an optimal use case example for a SCF and Glow Energy solution. We've decided to focus in on a standard 500 kW solar system with 14 chargers in total, 10 of those being DC fast chargers at a size of 180 kW, and 4 of those being level 2 chargers at a size of 16 kW. Our general cost assumptions, and these are high-level numbers, and can vary a tad based on the respective EPCs we plan to utilize for a specific project. We assume for around $200K per DC fast charger and around $5K per level 2 charger. This brings us to around $2.02 million for the total EVC cost, or $4.04 a watt. And in this scenario, we've assumed for a solar cost at $350 a watt, or $1.75 million. And this is likely a design configuration that incorporates majority rooftop. We're seeing carport solutions and costs hop up into the $4 per watt range pretty consistently now, and that's kind of where we're assuming for the most part with most of our EPC partners and or originator partners who rely upon our EPC network. But in this scenario, $350 per watt build is likely going to be majority rooftop, maybe bringing some carport to account for that. And that brings us to a total cost of $754 a watt, or $3.77 million for the total PV plus EVC cost assumptions, hard cost assumptions for this build. And this is our optimal use case example, right? We want to be able to provide a competitive solar plus EVC solution that isn't short on the solar and short on the charging stations. Ideally, we can get to somewhere where it's around half a megawatt in solar system size which is offsetting 100% of the tenant load, and then any potential house load that we can offset as well. And then utilizing anything that's not being charged from the house or the tenants to go directly towards those fast chargers. And 500 kW is a real competitive size range for us. I would say that 500 kW to a megawatt range is really where SCF can operate, where a lot of other financiers potentially cannot. And so incorporating revenue share and charging stations is really where we differentiate ourselves from the competitors that you'll see out in the marketplace currently. And for us to be able to get as competitive as possible with the revenue share and with the PPA rates, incorporating a public charger is going to be able to do so. And then obviously incorporating level 2 chargers not only is a great amenity for your respective tenants, especially at a discounted rate, but also will help the economics on our side as well. So showing how this optimal use case looks from a revenue stream standpoint. As I said, we've got 10 public fast chargers, 10% revenue share here, and 4 level 2 chargers. We're seeing an increased net operating income of around $80,000 in year 1, and you can see that chart here on the slide, and an increase in property value of around $5 million over the life of that 20-year term. But you can see that the revenue share in total looks to reach around $3 million plus over the course of the 20-year term. And at the end of the day, we're really projecting for what matters now. Whenever we get this process started and we get the system turned on, we have the chargers turned on, what kind of impact am I going to start seeing now? So that's why we highlight that revenue and increase of NOI of $80K in year 1, because these tangible these numbers are really tangible and really can be deployed quickly. SCF deploys a very specific marketing program to get our chargers essentially in the network of all other chargers, and so that people are heading to your respective property as quickly as possible as these chargers are turned on. We're incentivized for the chargers, for the solar system to work as efficiently and correctly as possible, as that's how we're paid. So if there's ever a scenario where chargers are having an issue, the solar system isn't working to the way it needs to be for whatever reason, we're incentivized to be on site as quickly as possible, to be a resource for your respective property owner, so that any of these issues get alleviated as quickly as possible and they get back to making everybody as much money as possible. So you're welcome to pause the slide here and or revisit it once we send these slides back out in regards to the type of revenue share that we could support in an optimal use case example. Again, this is a 14 charger solution, 10 fast chargers, 4 level 2 chargers. We're looking at over $3 million in revenue share over the life of the 20-year term, and over $1 million PPA savings, over $4 million in value, and then obviously an increase in property value as well is a lot of the added benefits to this solution. And at the end of the day, as a property owner, you're looking to fill tenants, right? You're looking to have people come to your respective property and fill up that occupancy as much as possible. And this is what this solution does, right? As an added amenity with the L2 chargers, level 2 chargers, but also having the PPA rate so that they're saving money on their utility bills. You're also not only increasing your NOI and the basis of revenue share and PPA savings, but you're also seeing a significant influx of tenant capacity. And that multiple revenue solution really is something that may seem too good to be true, but as the data suggests here, most certainly is not. And that'll bring us to the end of our webinar today. You'll see our contact information here listed on the next slide. Feel free to reach out to us directly. As I mentioned before, we will be sending these slides out to all of you here within the next hour or two. So feel free to reach out to us directly, take a picture on this slide so that you have this information. But we look forward to connecting with you and penciling on these opportunities as quickly as possible. And we'll move on to the question and answers portion of our webinar. So there should be a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to compile your thoughts and get a question in for us. We'll take a moment here to compile all of them and start answering some of these questions.
All right, I'm seeing some questions here pop in. I'll start answering a few. I had a question on who's handling the O&M for the chargers. So as we mentioned in the webinar, we're fully incentivized, SCF is, to make sure the chargers and the solar is working as efficiently and as productively as possible. So SCF and our partners will be handling the O&M to make sure that the chargers are running in full and to full capacity. And that's where we love to have direct contacts with your prospective off-takers. That way, if they have any specific questions, that we can interface with them directly. We have had situations with EPCs and developers where they're looking to do the O&M. We'd be happy to consider your respective EPC company to do the O&M pending an underwriting process. Looks like we had a question on how the EPC can also get in on the monthly revenue share payments. So we haven't deployed that model to date. We've had a few different integrators point that idea to us. I think the most sustainable model and the most scalable model we've seen to date has been to do a direct revenue share model with the off-taker. It also makes it easier for us doing direct interface with that prospective off-taker to sort of handle that relationship in its entirety. But it's definitely something that we've been asked before and something that we'll definitely consider in the near future. I had a question on the anticipated PPA rate based on that single site example. So that was at I believe, 16-cent PPA rate. That PPA rate is going to totally vary based on that prospective multifamily's occupancy rate, their utility, and just the avoided cost calculation that comes into the expected consumption at that site, and the utility rate that they're on. So I think we assumed an 18-cent avoided cost in this scenario with 16-cent PPA, but again, that's going to vary based on that multifamily site. Looking through a few other questions here. How much of an impact does the rate change from NEM 3.0 have on the projections that were just shown? So we're definitely really focused on that 90-day window. VDEM is obviously a crucial component of multifamily modeling. So getting that project analyzed, getting it under our view so that we can analyze the prospective utilization at that site, the solar consumption, and provide you back an idea of whether or not that site is going to be one worth pursuing. And if it is, we're happy to work with you as quickly as possible to do everything possible to get that project submitted for interconnection and get all that diligence completed in a timely manner so that we're getting grandfathered into those VNEM rates. And we're working behind the scenes to figure out what the process looks like post that 90-day window. From my understanding, there's definitely a solution available and plausible. So we're going to find exactly what that is and present it to you guys as such. Looking through a few more here before passing it off to my fellow panelists. So I did have a question on incorporating energy storage and how we can incorporate that in the model. So it's definitely something we're looking into. A lot of our opportunities now. NEM 3.0 has sort of made that a priority. So where we have utilities, such as I know City of Pasadena doesn't have EV tariff pricing, and so we need to utilize battery to some capacity in those models. FreeWire is also a battery storage technology we've considered to incorporate just peak shaving technology. And generally where we've incorporated battery, we've used it to solely peak shave chargers, fast chargers in those scenarios versus utilizing it to accommodate the solar in any way, shape, or form. But it's definitely something that we can take a look at. The solar plus EVC model really allows for us moving away from any sort of lag time with procuring energy storage equipment, and obviously the cost of it as well. We have seen the costs come down for the most part over the last 12 months or so when it comes to batteries. So that coupled with NEM 3.0 has really made it a more commonplace in these models that we're providing to these prospective off-takers. Those look like most of the questions for SCF. I'm seeing a few different few different questions come in for Glow. So Greg, if you want to pop on and attack a couple of those.
Thanks, sure thing. I'm not seeing those questions show up on my control panel.
Got it. Understood, Greg. So I got a question essentially, who's doing the installs for EV charging stations for Glow? What brand of chargers do you work with? So generally, Glow's not doing any install work. They're doing all subscriber tenant sign up. They're facilitating all payments. They have a great app that they utilize, incorporating kickoff meetings to work with these multifamily properties to get people to sign up. So the install generally is going to be the procurement of SCF to do that install work. And generally, the brands of chargers we're working with is BTC Power. That's primarily the brand we're working with currently. And we've considered other brands as well to get those projects completed. So and then the type of network we would be on is an SCF focused and branded network. So they would have availability in competition with all the other networks out there currently. Greg, question for you. How does the new CPUC ruling on VNUM affect the returns on a central solar array? Would the value of generated solar be pegged at the export rate, 8 cents?
Thanks. Yeah, sure. Happy to answer that one. So like SCF, Glow Energy is very focused on this 90-day window and getting projects grandfathered into VNUM 2.0 because it will result in the highest returns for VNUM systems that supply energy to the residents. That said, the CPUC did, in their recent decision, allow for netting for residential accounts, which does allow for battery storage and behind the meter consumption. It's aggregate netting for those meters. So long story short, there's still very much going to be an opportunity, but the economics will certainly be better here in this 90-day window under VNUM 2.0.
Thanks, Greg. Flipping through a few other questions here to see if there's anything specific for you or for John. I'm not seeing anything. As we mentioned, we'll get this webinar out to you all, so that there's any specific questions you have for John or Greg that you want to reach out to them directly on, we'll have that contact information page listed in that webinar. Let me go ahead and just scroll through a little bit more just to make sure. There's a question on doing charging stations outside of California, so I do want to clarify we're really focused on California as it's really a standalone market in regards to EV infrastructure, growth rate on EV, and then obviously the incentives available in California as well. So, we're looking to expand where we can, where utility and EV growth rate data suggests that there is worth investment in giving time to EV infrastructure outside of California. But the market still, as John has laid out earlier for us, the multifamily, still very robust. And I think, even if it shrunk a little bit, the last numbers that I saw with 20-to-1 EVs on the road to chargers available is still a massive number that needs to be supported in regards to getting charging stations where we're going to take the most advantage of those EVs. And so this is where we've really tried to put our really try to grow in this California market. But we'll see essentially as the world expands, as the nation expands with EV growth, we're going to hopefully expand our solutions that we can provide as well. Flipping through a few other questions here. So just a question on 200K for level 3 charger. That's generally the assumptions that we're going to utilize for the equipment we've utilized in the past. Again, that is a high level cost analysis assumption that we utilize for this single site example. The exact number might be a little bit lower or potentially higher in some scenarios, but we do feel like that's a conservative and accurate estimate for these pricings. Question on where you see the risks in the long-term revenue modeling, what variables could change and disrupt the financial benefits. It's a great question. I think right now we're looking at the hard data and EV growth, utilization data, and obviously the big component of the fact that we've lacked EV infrastructure in California for a while. So I think the biggest goal currently is to see how the data is taking us, and allow that to tell the story, what's happening in the near future with these revenue share assumptions, and then we're able to adjust where we need to in these assumptions in the future as we deploy more of these charging stations. So final question on expanding a bit on the fixed rate lease option. So that'll be a scenario where we aren't able to incorporate public charging, in which case monetizing them and providing a revenue share option would be a little bit less applicable from an economically viable standpoint. So providing a fixed lease rate to a prospective property owner would be a way to say, hey, thanks for letting us essentially get access to your tenants and get access to putting a level 2 charger on site. And so that would obviously not be as maybe competitive as a solution as a revenue share option with level 3 and level 2 chargers, but it's also a way to provide great amenities to your prospective tenants if they're driving EV chargers. And also that would be a scenario where we'd likely do an EV survey and get an idea of how many of your tenants currently drive EV chargers, and we're able to put as many L2s as economically viable at that prospective site, and ideally provide a discounted rate to those tenants so that they have another reason to stay at your multifamily property. And I think that's going to bring us to an end today. As we mentioned, we'll get this webinar out to you guys. If there's any specific questions for Greg or John that you'd like to reach out to them on, we'll have the contact information listed there. And if there's anything we didn't get to today in the questions, we'll make sure to reach out specifically to you and provide an answer. Thank you guys all for being here today.